Now, why does Iran want a nuclear weapon? It's very clear is that they feel once they become the leader of the Muslim Arab world.
But do you think every country should have a nuclear?
People talk about nuclear bomb. It is like saying, I have this ferocious dog with me at home. If you enter my house, I will let the dog loose.
How did Israel make their army so strong?
When you're cornered and you got your back to the wall, you will fight. And you will fight like hell because you fight like there's no tomorrow. Israel still fights its enemies every day. So Iran always had a problem with Israel. They committed a massacre of Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympics. They hijacked aircraft, one of them which was flown into Entebbe, along with almost all the hostages except for 3. I think now they realized after the hit which they got now, then they cannot do anything more like this. Israel will have to bomb Iran again. The real issue is Israel wants to stop Tehran from acquiring a nuclear bomb.
Iran is paying for it because Iran has funded it, right?
The US wants to be the world's policeman. They've been trying to do that from a number of years. Pakistan is being used by US to counter their nuclear sites, which can fall into the wrong hands. Trump going and asking Asim Munir to support him for a Nobel Prize. Imagine ridiculous, saying Trump should get a Nobel Peace Prize. And next day, Trump goes and bombs Iran.
Welcome, sir. Welcome to Layers of Life again. It is such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
Sir, I want to share a personal, interest that I have developed because I met you. So I was also a very apolitical person. I was like, jo ho raha hai hone do. I don't care as long as my home is safe. And when I met you and we were talking about, in our previous video, we were talking about India and Pakistan. That has suddenly ignited some kind of interest, I found an interest of geopolitics, like learning about these countries. And that's why we reached out to you again. And when you were so sweet, and you were like, you know what, okay, let's talk about Israel and Iran. I could have recorded the next day, but I didn't want to come unprepared because I have no idea about what's happening. I didn't follow a lot of news. So I was like, I'm going to spend a couple of days, I'm going to read about it, and then I'm going to sit with you and I'm going to talk everything about it.
Okay.
So even if right now I might not have 100% knowledge, but that's why we are here. And
No one has it. No one has it. There'll be God otherwise.
so thank you so much for helping me find a little bit of passion that I have. Thanks a lot, sir.
Okay.
So let's talk about the, most recent stuff that is happening in our world, which, people are also saying that it could be World War III. And this time it's not because of land or borders or, it is because of maybe oil and water. What do you think about this? Do you think World War III is coming anytime soon?
It is not possible. See, if you look at World War I and World War II, how did this start? They didn't start because of a war. This one started because of an assassination. Another started because of a misunderstanding. Well, for a world war to happen, you need 2 sides. You need this side and you need this side.
Correct.
There was Nazis and their proxies, and there was Allied forces in the Second World War. There's nothing like that now. Okay. The disintegration of Soviet Union, for that matter, USSR as it was called, today has led to a unipolar world. America is all powerful, or whatever they claim to be, rightfully so. And Soviet Union has disintegrated into smaller nations like Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, you name it. And the resultant battle between all these countries. You have Russia and Ukraine fighting over. You have Armenia and Azerbaijan fighting over. So these are countries which are like constantly fighting over things. And then you have small wars breaking out in different parts of the world. We had India, Pakistan.
Correct.
Okay. We already have going the Israel versus Iran versus the rest.
Correct.
There is something happening all over the world. There's Sudan, there's something happening always. There's violence in Africa.
Correct.
But the point is simple. There will never be a world war because nobody wants it. You cannot sustain it.
Okay.
We need a villain for a war. We had Hitler during the Second World War. As long as he was there in the scene, the world war held together. The moment he was out, the world war stopped. Americans dropped a couple of bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that's the end of the world war. But the present context is not there. Present context, they are all, as I told you, Armenia, Azerbaijan was some fight. Nobody even bothered about it. The region of Nagorno-Karabakh, that is a big fight for that area. The world never knew it. Till Ukraine and Russia started fighting, the world never knew that
Correct.
Ukraine existed.
Correct.
Then we have India, Pakistan.
Correct.
Suddenly the war changed. They said no foot soldiers. We have missiles flying here from here, drones flying from there, and air superiority and air defense systems get talked about. And President Trump rightly goes around saying that he doesn't want wars, he's going to stop everything, which is not possible. The Iran-Israel so-called ceasefire is very limited. It'll fall apart any day.
Exactly.
Because one, US itself will realize that Iran is a non-reliable partner, or even in any scheme of things, you cannot trust Iran.
Correct. Okay.
But the point is everybody has to exist. If you try a regime change in Iran right now, you are kick Khamenei out of the power, remove the mullahs and remove the theocratic society, whom are going to bring in? Look at what happened in Iraq. Look at what happened in Afghanistan. Look at what happening in Syria. Look at what happened in Lebanon. Everywhere the US has gone, they have messed up the situation. They have fled from Afghanistan. They left Iraq carrying no weapons of mass destruction. They went to Libya and killed Gaddafi, saying that he is this dictator. But what is left of Libya today is a mess. Something similar to every country. It started with Vietnam for US and it continues. We got to remember one thing. America has never fought a war on its soil. Till date. Only twice they were attacked, which is not a war. One was Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked with their suicide fighter planes. The second was when 9/11 happened.
Correct.
Both the times US reacted.
Yes.
First time they went and bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The second time they took the B-2 bombers, which were now used, all the way to Afghanistan and bombed the hell out of them. The Bora Bora caves and all that kind of stuff. The point is simple, is that today it's about geography. It's also about ego. It's about saying that guy has a nuclear capability, I don't want him to have it.
But do you think every country should have a nuclear?
No. The reason is, it's a very dangerous thing. If you look at what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, very few grams of uranium was used to create that explosion. And we are talking of the 40s, when nuclear theory and nuclear scientists are not really in the scheme of things.
Correct.
Now the world has changed. You can have a dirty bomb placed in the middle of New York, and for the next 5,000 years, New York will not be hospitable. So no, it should not be. Nobody uses a nuclear bomb. Let's be very clear about it. People talk about nuclear bomb. It is like saying, I have this ferocious dog with me at home. If you enter my house, I will let the dog loose. That guy knows that the dog will bite him. He will not enter the house.
So, the allegations of Iran building their own nuclear weapon, is it because to save them, or is it to attack their enemy so that they can...
See, in the Islamic world, only one nation has nuclear capability, which is Pakistan. And Pakistan's nuclear devices, if you can call them that, are controlled by US. They have very tight control on Pakistan because they are scared that either the ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Taliban will one day come and take away all these assets. The Pakistani army is not stable. Technically, Allah and army rule Pakistan. Simple as that. So, there's no political establishment to speak of. Shahbaz Sharif is there.
Correct.
Naan ke waaste. We saw what happened to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. We saw what happened to Benazir Bhutto. It is army that rules Pakistan. So, at least there is a system there. Okay, the nuclear button is with the army chief, not with Shahbaz Sharif.
Correct.
Or any civilian administrator.
Makes sense.
In India, it's other way around. We have the prime minister holding the nuclear button.
Yes.
But for that, there is a protocol to be followed. As I said before, after Chernobyl, what happened, and Fukushima, the disaster, no country will ever even try to play around with nuclear assets. So the results will be catastrophic.
Makes sense. But, there are countries where the emotions always takes over the logic,
True.
So, what is the guarantee that people are not going to act on the emotions?
He cannot.
Yeah.
See, even North Korea, technically possess nuclear missiles.
Yeah.
We don't know the capabilities. They keep firing odd missile there and here, normal missiles without a warhead. Now, Kim Jong-un is an eccentric character.
Correct.
In Telugu, they say pichon chetla rai. That's rock in the hand of a man. You don't know where you throw it.
Yeah, true.
So the point is very simple: is that if you have a nuclear asset, you need to have a stable administration. The point you said about ego issue is with Iran is they are a Shia nation.
Correct. Yeah.
The rest of the Muslim world is Sunnis.
Yes.
And they are never trusted. The Shias and Sunnis have a history that goes back to Prophet Muhammad. Beyond Prophet,
Yes.
after Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah.
That's where they split
Yeah.
as to who will succeed him.
So one is the son-in-law, or one is the
Yeah, so they had assumptions of opinion,
yeah.
which again goes back into history. Now, why does Iran want a nuclear weapon? It's very clear is that they feel once they become the leader of the Muslim Arab world. That's why I use the word, two words, Muslim and Arabs.
Yeah.
So some people came, Pakistan is not an Arab country, it's a Muslim country, Islamic country. So they become the leader of the Islamic country with a bomb with them. Once you have that, the advantage is that you can do anything you want to blackmail others. You can threaten even the US, saying, I'll drop a bomb on you. We'll never do it, but you always threaten.
Fair.
Second, it gives you the clout which, say, Saudi Arabia can't have it. You might ask me the question, Saudi has all the money. Qatar has all the money.
Correct. Yeah.
In fact, Qatar has all the terrorist groups sitting in Qatar. Al-Qaeda se legi, you take Muslim Brotherhood, you take Hamas, Houthis, everybody sitting in Qatar. But does Qatar have a nuclear bomb? No. They could have with all the money,
Yes.
but then no.
Why?
The point is, US has a base there, if you know that. Recently it was attacked.
Yes.
US has a base in every country there except Iran.
Okay.
There are 15 bases in the Middle East,
Okay.
both naval and air and land assets. Now the problem is simple, is that the Muslim countries, all of them, without exception, are all ruled by monarchies. Name one Islamic country in the Middle East which is democratic. From Jordan to Egypt, okay, you can say Egypt is not a monarchy typically, but then they have hand-me-downs which come down from Anwar Sadat to the latest ones. You go to Iraq, it's finished. It was a dictator. You look at Afghanistan, finished. It was to be a Soviet country ruled by Soviets, and where it is right now. Pakistan run by the army. There is no democracy. Pakistan, we claim we are democratic, but everybody knows what their democracy is.
True.
Then the problem is, when in such a state, when you have no democracy at all, mob rule takes over. जिसके हाथ में लाठी उसकी भैंस.
Fair.
Simple. So if you have a nuclear bomb, I become the dada of that area.
Fair. Makes sense.
And I will sit there and dictate terms. Whether you have use it, you have the capability to deliver it. See, having a nuclear weapon is no fun. You need a vehicle to deliver it. It has to be a fighter aircraft. It has to be a surface-to-air missile, or air-to-air missile, or even a nuclear that is from the sea to the air, or sea to land. If you don't have that, it is like carrying a bomb and walking around saying, I'll throw it on you. तो फेंकेगा तो 5 feet दूर जाके गिरेगा, बस खत्म. So that is the problem with Iran. So Iran needed to have nuclear weapons to use their missile program, which has decades of expertise. So Israel and US are very scared because of that. For the last 20-25 years, Iran is on the watch list of IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. They are tracking Iran's every development, every stage. They have cameras. They have inspectors who drop in unannounced. They are to ensure that Iran doesn't develop a nuclear bomb. It's very clear. Iran has reached 60% purity. Some cases they say 80, but we don't know. 60 is what the IAEA reports. After that, Iran stopped cooperating with them. The moment they hit 80% purity, Iran is getting into weapons grade uranium and plutonium. That is where the danger starts. Tomorrow they can threaten the US. They don't want Israel to exist. They might even throw a few at Saudi Arabia or Bahrain or other countries, with whom they are not exactly friendly with.
So let's just go back to history. Let us please explain us everything about Israel and Iran. So because I think until 1979, Israel and Iran were like alliances. They were doing a project Flower together, like developing their own missiles and all of it. Then what happened? And before that, Israel was still not a peace, never had a peaceful battleground because Israel kept fighting with one or the other country. So tell us more about the background and the history of Israel.
Israel's history is very checkered. It goes back to the biblical times, Solomon's time. It goes back to the Babylonian times. You will find the mention of maybe not the state of Israel, but the Judas, the Jews, their fights with the Arabs, all mentioned over the history. The Balfour Declaration, that is there. The British involvement in how Palestine was formed, the role of Egypt, Jordan, and others. These are all a part of history today. Israel never existed as a country before 1948.
Correct.
The British, who then ruled that area, decided that Palestine will be given a separate state, basically the Arab Palestines. But the question was, where would the Jews go? The Jews were already suffering. They had suffered at the hands of the Second World War, where Hitler exterminated millions of them. But many of them fled every country in the world. Every country in the world. You look today, there are Russian Jews, there are Ukrainian Jews, there are Egyptian Jews, there are French Jews, there are American Jews. Why? There are Indian Jews, the Puccini Jews as we call them. How did they all land up here? They were kind of driven out of the land, which everybody claimed that time itself that they had no right to exist. The same line is used by Iran today, saying Israel does not have a right to exist. How can you ever say a country has no right to exist? They have. You look at every country in the world, they have somehow developed on their own or been historically ruled by somebody like British or the French or the Portuguese or whoever it was. But over a period of time, those countries had secured their independence.
Yeah.
Israel's problem was that they could never get a land to call their own. The British were ready to give, but they wanted the Palestine to be recognized first. The Israelis said, we will buy the land from the Arabs. And they did buy land. Huge tracts of land, which they bought, what is today's core area of Israel, was bought from the Arabs because they said nothing grows here. It's a rain shadow area. There's no rains. Why will somebody come there and start cultivating or even staying there? Where will the water come from? But Israel did all that and more.
But who took the decision? Because who took the decision of taking a land in the middle of hostile neighbors?
It was not hostile then. Okay, let's go back in history again. Even if you take the 1800s and the 1900s, and there was no clear Egypt, there was no Jordan and things like that. These are all evolving over the British rule, the French rule and all that in that area. The French ruled a better part of Africa as such. Europe, today's Europe, again was divided into various areas where various fiefdoms had their own say. Israel as such, when the actual people fled from Israel, almost every country said no to them. They didn't want to take the Israelis, Jews to be exact. They didn't want the Jews. One of the few countries, in fact, today Israel acknowledges, go back to the Israeli history books, even the textbooks say that if there's one country in the world that accepted us with open arms, it was India. The Jews landed in India, were given land to stay by the Rajas of those days, the rulers of those days, from Bombay to Kerala. They landed everywhere. The first synagogue you find in Kerala is located right 16 kilometers from my village in a place called Kranganore, which is today called Kodingalur. We find the mention of Kranganore in the Testaments because that's where they landed. And in fact, the Raja of that area gave them a huge tract of land from Kodingalur till Guruvayur, where the famous temple exists.
Yes. Yeah.
The entire land was given to them, saying, this is your land, do it. And if you go to Cochin, you have a beautiful Jew town there, where there's a synagogue. There were 26 Israeli families staying till about something like 20, 25 years ago. Now there's only one, and when that family is, there's nobody left now, technically. But the Jew town retains a charm of its own. The Jews knew how to survive. They were traders, they were money lenders, and of course, they were technologists of the early days. They knew how to survive because they knew that if they didn't survive, they won't exist. Simple as that. Next generation won't exist. So I had to fight because the entire, almost half a generation of Jews had not wiped out by Hitler. They had to do something. So that is when Israel said, okay, we will start buying land. The Israeli merchants, Israeli traders, they all started buying land from the Arabs in what is today the so-called, or what others say would be the Gaza and the Palestine and the proper Israel by itself. But Israel was never allowed to relax by the neighbors. 1948, which is a year after we got independence, the state of Israel came into being, not formed, came into being. Very crucial usage of words there. And after that, Israel found that it was surrounded by neighbors, the Arab neighbors, like Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and they had the Mediterranean Sea on the other side. From the Six-Day War to the Yom Kippur War, Israel was continuously being attacked by all these people.
So when Israel bought the land from the Arabs, why war? Because they were okay to give the land, right? Then why, the wars were...
Israel always felt that it needed more land.
Oh, okay.
Because the diaspora was coming back. The Jews who had fled to every other part of the world were suddenly coming back to Israel, and there was no land. They needed land to expand. They needed new settlements. And the war presented them with that opportunity. The Egyptians and the Syrians and the Lebanese and Jordani, with money funded by Saudi Arabia and other West Asian countries, thought they could overrun the state of Israel. They were badly mistaken. Sinai was taken, you name it, every area that is occupied by Egypt and Jordan. By the way, when the British started giving freedom to the Palestine, every bit of Palestine land that was given by the British was grabbed by Jordan and Egypt, including Sinai and all the spaces. That is why the original thing which the Palestinian protesters speak about, from the river to the sea, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, is Palestine. But in the middle, there is the state of Israel. And they kept expanding. The Golan Heights, Sinai Peninsula, which was given back after the agreement with Egypt.
Yeah.
So everywhere Israel kept expanding. They needed land. And they were people who take an inch of land and do something with it, not just keep it like that.
Yeah.
They were very, very productive people, very enterprising people there. And that is how we saw that despite having very little of Air Force or Navy or even Army, the Six-Day War and the Yom Kippur War was won with phenomenal success by Israel against established armies of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria.
How did Israel made their army troops so strong?
You ever seen a small cat?
Yeah.
Put it in one corner of a room and try going after with a stick. What will the cat do? It will fight back.
Yeah.
No matter how small it is.
Fair.
That is what it is. When you're cornered and you got it back to the wall, you will fight. And you will fight like hell because you fight like there's no tomorrow. And that's what Israelis did. I mean, people may have different opinions on them, saying that they did this, they did that. What opinions? Look at they kind of conquered Palestine territory, they're sitting on Palestine territory, their human rights gap, Harme, and all that kind of stuff. And the point is very simple: is what are the Arabs doing? The Arabs do nothing. They found oil, especially the Gulf states found oil. They became rich overnight and they became big countries. On the other hand, you had countries like Jordan and Egypt, which didn't have great amount of oil, nothing at all actually. They had to somehow exist and fight with themselves, fight with others. We saw how Anwar Sadat was killed in a Republic Day parade of theirs, and how Hosni Mubarak came up. We know what happened to the Palestinians also. We saw the Palestine terrorists naming themselves as Palestine Liberation Organization led by Yasser Arafat. Even a head of state visit to a country like India, and today we say Pakistani terrorist. He was a terrorist. But Indira Gandhi and others felt that he was a freedom fighter. And as they say in English, one man's terrorist, another man's freedom fighter. But Yasser Arafat, after all the what he did, dirty tricks, the Munich Olympics massacre, the Entebbe hijacking, numerous killings across the world, finally he was brought to the table. He knew that he cannot fight the state of Israel. He had to make peace with them. And that is how the Israel-Oslo Accord was signed. Nobel Prize was handed out, which is what even Trump is trying to get one now. All this happened. But the problem was simple. Still, even then, Israel as a state was refused to be accepted by Arab countries. They felt no, they cannot exist. Which one Iran uses the line now. So what is different? Nothing has changed. In the 70 odd years, 75 odd years, yeah, Israel still fights its enemies every day, every hour, and every minute. Their technological capabilities are unrivaled in the world today. They have their own air force. Of course, they don't make jets, but they get jets from US. They make their own missile systems. They have partnerships in India with many Indian companies to develop these missiles. They have a very good navy in spite of not having a direct access to a seaport. There are various things.
Tell us a little bit more about Iran.
See, Iran as such, under Pahlavis, the Shah of Iran, was a very modern country. Tehran University had girls who used to wear mini skirts and walk around.
Yeah.
They look at the picture today.
It is because of the Western culture, because the British was kind of managing the.
They were, but Shah of Iran was very modern.
Okay.
Okay, like the others. If you look at the King of Jordan today, something very similar. The Assads were like that.
Yeah.
They are all, in fact, if you except for the Middle East, the Arab countries, you come to this side of it, they're all very modern.
Yes.
They were at least. They're still sometimes. But the problem with Iran is simple, is that the Shah of Iran was accused of being corrupt, accused of defrauding, accused of killing people with whom he did not agree, the human rights part of it, torture and killings and other things. So slowly, a cleric called Ayatollah Khomeini started giving fiery Friday sermons. It built up, protests began, and finally, the huge wall of protests, the Shah of Iran had to flee. And even though he was supported by, as you said, the British, the Americans, everybody was supporting, because there was oil to be had.
Oil, yeah.
But the Shah of Iran was corrupt, there's no doubt about it. But so were other Middle East countries. None of them are doodh mein dhule hue. Everybody is like that. So that is where the Iranian problem started, is when the Ayatollah, when Khomeini took over, there was a big standoff with the American embassy. They had literally kidnapped, or you can say even taken in custody, a number of American diplomats in the American mission in Tehran. Jimmy Carter, I think, was the president then, and there was a huge standoff for a number of years, I think almost for a year before these hostages could be released. Now, that was the start point of the friction between the Iranians and the Western world. It started with the US, but sooner or later, Iran realized that it's a stuck in between because it's a Shia nation. They needed proxies to find their battles.
Why, I never understood why they needed proxies when they could directly fight.
No, you cannot. Would you go all the way to Lebanon every day and fire from there? An Iranian? No, you cannot. Lebanon would not allow you to be there in the first place. So you created a proxy called Hezbollah. And mind you, even today, Lebanon has a parliament. And number of the seats, I think 17 of them are represented by Hezbollah.
Okay.
Okay, no, this is a problem. So Iran needed to have its proxies, because no Sunni nation would take missiles from it and say, okay, we will be a part of it. Then you had Gaza and the Middle and the West Bank. Even if you look at today, when the Oslo Accord was signed, there was a deal between Yasser Arafat and Israelis that a certain part of the Middle East would be carved out. That is the areas where they were holding into territories for the Arabs to manage on their own. Yasser Arafat passed away. The Palestinian Authority came into being because terrorist organization cannot exist anymore after the agreement. But Palestinian Authority was the biggest failure on the face of earth. They could not manage a small piece of land, and sooner or later something had to go wrong, and that is when the Hamas stepped in. Hamas is today running Gaza,
Gaza, yeah.
not the West Bank, Gaza. Can you blame the Israelis for it? And what does Hamas do? They get weapon, they get money, they get everything from Iran, and they keep firing it at Israel. October 7th massacre that happened, I think was a turning point in the history of not just for Israel, but for Iran and all their proxies. You look at the number of leaders of different terrorist organizations who have been taken out in the last 2 years. Okay, from Sinwars to the Hezbollah chief Nasrallah, Ismail Haniya, you name it, they all been wiped out literally by Israel. The latest was when they hit Iran on the day one of the 12-day war, if you can call it that. They wiped out the top Iranian military leadership.
Yes.
They wiped out all the nuclear scientists at the top.
Yeah.
Imagine the kind of intelligence that Israel has, that Mossad has, that made this possible. The point is very simple. Israel is like a cat in a corner of a wall. I mean, stuck towards it, with its back to it. It will fight. It knows it has no choice. And the Israeli diaspora, the Israelis across the world, unlike us Indians, support their government.
So this was the first time Israel directly attacked Iran,
Yes.
and there is an allegation that US has also kind of bagged Israel.
Yeah, it has to. It has to. There is no other choice. Because US also has an enemy. They are also not so friendly with Iran. They have a huge issues with Iran.
Correct. And it is also because US wants to keep the power this side as well. Maybe that's why.
US wants to be the world's policeman.
Yeah.
They've been trying to do that from a number of years.
And I think they're succeeding.
Yeah, they are. They are in a sort of stupid Trump today. He says, I got Pakistan and India to agree to a ceasefire, which we know is not true. He got two obscure nations from Africa to come to Washington last week and sign an agreement. And he says, look, I've stopped this war, which is going on from donkey's years. Then he got Iran and Israel. We thought he was speaking to them, announced a ceasefire. So Trump is trying to say that I am the big boss of this world. You have to listen to me, or else I'll make your life miserable.
Or is it also because he wanted to make peace between India and Pakistan, because he wants to have a strong alliance with Pakistan because they share the land with Iran? And if Pakistan...
Nothing to do with the Pakistan's nuclear assets that US is scared of. Sharing a land with Iran makes no difference.
So if they are in good alliance with Pakistan, then maybe, if Pakistan could, because he had a lunch with Prime Minister, and he is like, if Pakistan... Army chief, sorry. So if he has, if they have kind of, conquer or...
US has a limited objective everywhere. As I told you, there are 15 bases in the West Asia. This is the 16th one. The Noor Khan base is done by the Americans. Why do you think the Americans reacted when we hit the Noor Khan base on that day, during the 4th day of the skirmish? Because they're sitting there. Their aircraft is sitting there. That is when they realized that, look, this is turning out to be a bigger mess. Let us stop the skirmish between India and Pakistan. That's why they got involved.
And US has always been dal badlo. Abhi iska, abhi uska side.
See, they are very transactional people. And Trump more so. He's a real estate guy.
Yes.
So he will say, boss, if I put in $100, how much will I get? Are you with me or against me? Simple. So that's how Trump functions, and that's how most US presidents are functioning. Let us be very clear about it. They think they have a right to rule over the rest of the world, that the rest of the world has to speak to them. When Soviet Union was there, countries could go either way. But now that choice is not there. So countries like India have to stand up for their own cause, stand up for their own reason. Otherwise, no way. We need to fight our own battles. And that is very, very clear. And we learned that in Operation Sindoor when we realized that US is sitting with Pakistan.
Yeah.
Asim Munir has lunch with President Trump, and next day, Iran gets bombed. The third day, rather, Iran gets bombed. How come? Because he's told him very clearly, boss, Noor Khan base we'll be using as a backups. And in case any of my B-2s have a problem, they'll land somewhere in Pakistan. This is what it is. I mean, let's be very clear. The Americans want a share of their pie everywhere. And that is what they are.
So the Mossad has taken out top scientists, right? Do you think scientists should be treated like as enemy targets?
Like the usual scientists are never there. How did Homi Baba die? Explain to me. He was killed in a very mysterious air crash, just as he was getting India's nuclear bomb ready.
Yeah.
Who killed him? Everybody knows that the CIA did it.
Yeah.
The CIA themselves admitted indirectly that they were involved in the elimination of Homi Baba.
Okay, so we'll come back to the America and the effects. We spoke about Israel's history, we spoke about Iran's history a little bit. Now, if you could explain in extremely simple language, why are these two countries fighting? Like, what is the reason? It's not border, it's not. Is it just because of religion and power, or why are these two countries fighting?
For Israel, Iran is a threat due to its nuclear program and missile program. For Iran, Israel is a threat because they can finish them off any day if they want to. Israel will not hit Saudi Arabia. Israel will not hit Bahrain, will not hit Qatar, nor hit Oman or any other country. But why does it pick on Iran? Because Iran created this proxy which we spoke about some time back. The Houthis hitting the ships, sailing towards the Arabian Sea and coming from the Strait of Hormuz and other places. Then we have the Hezbollah firing in from Lebanon, and Hezbollah is the best trained among all these three proxies. Hamas doesn't have the expertise which Hezbollah had. Thousands of missiles were shipped to the Hezbollah. They were given training. The Iranian generals used to sit there. And in a case about 8 to 9 months ago, or maybe even a year and a half ago, the Israelis bombed the Syrian embassy, where the Iranians' embassy was located in Syria, and 3 of the top generals of Iran were killed.
So you mean that Israel did not initiate this fight, Iran did?
Hey, you can say sort of. Where did it all begin? Began on October 7th. Okay, now people say October 7th is only an indicative date. There were fights before that between Israel. Correct. Israel and Hamas used to fight. Before that, Israel and PLO used to fight. There were numerous battles. The PLO itself is a terrorist organization, or was a terrorist organization. They committed a massacre of Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympics. They hijacked aircraft, one of them which was flown into Entebbe, which Israelis recovered, along with almost all the hostages except for 3. So Iran always had a problem with Israel, which none of the other Arab countries had. Of course, Arab countries never had a proper relationship till the Abraham's Accords came about. They never had a proper relationship with Israel. But if you recollect, Saudi Arabia was about to sign the agreement, the Abraham Accord with Israel, when October 7th happened. Somebody didn't want that Israel to be having normal relations with countries from West Asia. The Israel...
When you say somebody, who is it? Is it US? Is it
obviously Iran.
Okay.
Iran didn't want that. Its position was threatened. Its hegemony was threatened. Its power as a nuclear power was threatened because they could not make nuclear weapons.
But why did so many countries have problem with Israel? Only because of religion. And
then if you ask me what is the religion of Israel?
Jews.
Yeah, they are Jews.
Yeah.
Judaism, or what I can hear it. The point is, Israel's religion has nothing to do with the Arabs. The Arabs' problem is that Israel has no right to exist.
In
That they're living on Palestinian territory, they've been killing Palestinians, and that is how the terrorist group came up, be it PLO, be it Hamas, or anything else. So if Israel does not have a right to exist, what will they do? They will fight to exist. They bought a country buying land, barren land from the Arabs before 1940s, before the Balfour Declaration. And then what did they do? They converted that land into one of the most productive assets anywhere in the world. The Arabs were lazy because they were only dependent on oil money. Israel was not that. They didn't have oil. But then they created a technology paradigm shift, which was huge.
And that's why the countries got jealous and they wanted the land back because,
That is exactly what it was. The fight was all for the land later on. And Israel knew that they had to keep expanding. The kibbutz actually had to go in the big way. But then the Sinai Peninsula or the occupied West Bank, as they say, as the Palestinians call it, were all a part of something else. Jordan owned a big piece of the land on West Bank and they had to give it up. Sinai Peninsula was belonging to the Palestine. Why is nobody talking about that? That these same Arab nations are sitting on Palestinian land. Now, of course, some of them have returned it, but that doesn't absolve them of a crime. It is like Vijay Mallya saying, I've taken 9,000 crores and returned 13,000 crores, so you leave me free. No, it cannot be. You committed a crime. That's exactly the problem with Arabs, is that they have kind of systematically finished up. Tell me one reason. Why can't any of these countries, including Saudi Arabia or rich countries, take Palestinians into refugees into their own land? They are going all the way to UK, they're going to U.S, they're landing up in different European countries and asking for asylum. Why is it that none of them are going to an Islamic country? They won't, because they will not be taken. These people, Islamic countries, don't want a headache of the Palestinians with them, but they will keep talking big things about them. They'll keep funding them.
But I think it's the brutality to the level the Palestinians are suffering.
Well, it can be two ways. What did you do on October 7th? Who killed the Israeli? Let's go back even further. Who killed the Israeli athletes? Okay. Who killed, the hostages in Kampala? A few of them. There are numerous instances where Israelis were massacred in their own country by way of suicide bombing, shootouts, everything, till the Israelis perfected the art of detecting these people early. A number of Arabs stay and work in Israel. They have no issues. It is these terrorists who keep on attacking Israel because they say Israel has kind of jailed a number of our freedom fighters. And Israel says, sorry, they are murderers, they're criminals, they are terrorists, and we will jail them. That is why even today when a prisoner exchange happens because of the hostages held by Hamas in Gaza, the Palestinian prisoners are being released. So sometimes it's just one person and 100 Palestinian prisoners are being released. So 1:100. I'm not saying Israel is all honest and great, but Israel has an existential crisis. That is the problem with them. So if they've taken a terrorist and imprisoned him, the justice system is there at least to deal with that. Now tell me which Arab country has a justice system? And they're kind of very transparent democratic justice. There's nothing like that. None of them have it. So at least Israel is a semblance of democracy. The governments there get elected. They have prime ministers who come and gone, from Yitzhak Rabin to Shimon Peres and now to Netanyahu. The problem is simple. Which Arab country can now say that we have a similar format? And all of them have a problem with Israel. But today, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, none of them have any problem.
They once did. Like Jordan once did have a problem with Israel.
See, Jordan doesn't have a problem today. Jordan helped shoot down few of the missiles which are shot the other day by Iran.
Yeah.
Jordan doesn't have an issue. Egypt doesn't want to. Egypt has nothing to do with Palestine. We say we'll not even touch them. They'll only offer them the opening from Rafah, which will get the food into Gaza, the food trucks. That's it. There were tunnels which are dug from Egypt into Gaza over a long period of time, which were used to smuggle weapons into Gaza. Egypt looked the other way around till the Israelis discovered and blew it up. That's what they did.
Tell us more about October 7th.
I think it was one of the biggest miscalculations of Hamas, which is that led complete annihilation of all the terrorist group leaders. From Nasrullah in Lebanon of the Hezbollah, to Ismail Hania of Hamas, to Sinwar's Moda brothers in Gaza. The Iranian top leadership had got wiped out, military and scientific. They never calculated that Israel will do this. October 7th, when I was reading the reports by other Arab organizations, every Arab country is accused Hamas of doing something which is kind of endangered their own existence.
Okay.
Imagine all these Iranian generals would have been alive. Hezbollah's chief, Nasrallah, would have been alive. Hamas's chief would have been alive. Nobody would have died. But on October 7th, Hamas, aided by civilians, people of Gaza went across the Israeli border. A big security lapse, big intelligence failure, no doubt about it. Killed over 1,500 Israelis, kidnapped an equal number of them from a music festival and other places. brought them into Gaza, and from that day, Israel realized that it's no point in talking to them.
But when Israel has such amazing security and stuff, how did the
There is a failure that happened. You might ask, how did Kargil happen? People say that how did the Pakistanis come and sit on top of those huge mountain ranges? Did we not know it? Yes, there was a failure. But then, you can't be always 100% correct. Security failures do happen. It is how you learn from it. Okay, Israel has faced this kind of situation before. October 7th should have never happened. The problem with the Israelis is also that on weekends, they think the weekends very serious. The Sabbath, as they call it. The Yom Kippur war happened on Yom Kippur, which is one of the holiest days of Israel for the Israelis. Why? Because they all are at prayer that day. And the enemies know that that's the right day to hit Israel.
Okay.
The 6-day war, something's very similar. All these are held on days which Israelis are religiously celebrating something. But October 7th, they knew an opportunity. There was a planning from a long time. It was not a just off-the-cuff moment. This entire planning was done by Hamas to kind of get back at Israel and say that, look, we'll kidnap your people, we'll take them back, and then we will bargain for our prisoners. That's exactly what they did. But they never, ever thought that Israel would kind of completely demolish Gaza. Today, Gaza is gone. It will take under 50 to 60 years to rebuild Gaza.
So is that what is called Operation Rising Lion?
So Rising Line was against Iran.
Against Iran. Yeah. So what is that called?
That is a different operation. That has nothing to do with this, actually. Okay. So, see, there are different operations which are different names for Israel.
Okay.
When they went against Iran, it is a different operation. When they went against Lebanon, it is a different operation. When they went against Hamas, it's a different operation. The point is simple, is that you cannot have one same fit-all things for handling everybody. Hamas, technology-wise, their missiles are not great. All supplied by Iran again. But on the other hand, Hezbollah is very well trained, superb, but the Israelis just knocked them off with the pager bombings first, followed by the complete decimation of their leadership, starting with Nasrallah. Today, Hamas is virtually non-existent. That's what they've done.
But did Israel underestimated Iran after, I know that Iran first came into their country and did stuff, and then Israel again attacked Gaza. But did not think about what's next? What would the next
Iran
be for some Iran?
Israel's main problem. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, that's it.
Israel's main issue was with Iran was the nuclear part of it. But then Tehran also had accumulated enough ballistic missiles over the years, thousands and thousands of them.
Tehran is?
Technology, Tehran in a sense, when we always talk of the regime, we talk of the regime in Tehran,
Okay.
the Iranian regime.
Okay.
And where did they get it from? They got it from a variety of sources, mainly North Korea, China, and Russia. All of them gave them the missiles. They learned the technology, then they started developing their own different range of missiles. That means we saw that other day also. They can strike Israel. They struck Tel Aviv. They struck parts of Haifa.
Yeah.
They hit a hospital. They hit a residential complex. To the last part of the war, I have a feeling that Israeli Iron Dome was not working to its fullest. People were talking comparison. They were doing a comparison with what happened in India when we had the 4-day skirmish with Pakistan. Our multi-layered air defense system worked wonderfully then. Problem with Israel is they have 3 systems to counter. The bottommost one is the Iron Dome, which you're talking about, which is basically 30 to 40 kilometers. Under 30, upper 20 also. Any missile can be handled at that point. That is why you see them in the sky kind of lighting up and go. Beyond that, what you don't see is a thing called David Sling.
Okay.
David Sling handles 200 to 300 kilometers away missiles coming from that distance. The last one is the Patriot, which is a joint American venture, which handles ICBMs, continental ballistic missiles also, what we also call hypersonics on tanks. Now, the problem is when you're hit with 100 missiles at one time, the system picks up and decides which one to tackle first. And 2 or 3 of them may get away. Either because the system has said it is not worth tackling it, it's very expensive. Remember, to counter each missile costs millions, and you cannot have kind of a large amount being used every time, sooner or later you're going to run out of it. And I feel one way that Israel, one good thing about this entire thing is Israel has managed to take a break, gather enough missiles from US or wherever it is, including India. We have supplied missiles to them and fight another day.
Israel is being supported by US, like clearly, and Iran is being supported by China and Russia to balance the power. So how is this going to work
I
out?
don't think Russia was involved this time, but Russia have their own problem. They have their own battle with Ukraine. They have no time to support Iran. They did earlier when they were not fighting the war. They had given a lot of technology. They had given a lot of weapons because they fought Iran as an enemy of US, which they couldn't depend on. Okay, so it's very simple. Iran was angry at US, always angry at US, even now. And death to America and death to Israel are two slogans that Khamenei and his supporters keep shouting. So naturally they funded. China, yes. Why China again? China because China doesn't like US.
Yes.
So anybody who's fighting US is my friend, according to China. And that's what they do. The Chinese are giving weapons to Pakistan. And today the news report has come in that they even provided real-time intelligence on India to Pakistan. Imagine. Just because you don't like India, you do all that kind of stuff. So something very similar with US. So over a period of time, and what happened in the Rising Line operation is also very simple, is that they decided in this 12-day window which they had, that they would hit the leadership first, military and scientific. They will go after the missile sites, production sites. They would hit the missile launch vehicles. And last but not the least, they would hit the nuclear assets. Be it Natanz, be it Tehran University, be it Fordow, be it Isfahan, everywhere they decided to hit. The only problem they had was they didn't have enough of huge bombs to go after the facilities which are underground mounted, which is why the US got the B-2 bombers. Right? We still don't know whether that strike was fully successful. There are different reports. One which was leaked, which said it was not totally damaged.
Yeah.
Another one which said that it is totally damaged. We don't wait for days, and it's only Israelis who can tell us because there needs to be ground intelligence. There needs to be somebody on the ground who would go in and check and say, look, they are back by 20 years. Their equipment is totally damaged. We don't know today. The Americans are celebrating, but I think it's too early to celebrate.
Yeah. So Rising Line is only and only because they don't want Iran to have their own nuclear weapon just yet.
Correct. And also to avoid the threat of missiles which are constantly being either given to Hamas, Houthis and Hezbollah or directly being fired by Iran. Remember, before Rising Line, Iran had fired missiles at Israel. It is not that they didn't do it. So they cannot have been accused saying Israel started the war. Israel didn't start the war technically. But this war has been going from 48.
Yeah.
Iran entered the picture only now. Before that, it was Jordan, Egypt, Syria, and Lebanon. So the world has changed since then. They are quiet. These guys on the other side, especially the Iranians, have started picking a fight with Israel. But I think now they realized, after the hit which they got now, then they cannot do anything more like this. But I am very skeptical about the American way of looking at things. America suddenly seems to be very pally with China, saying, you go sell oil to everybody you want. Iran can sell oil to China. They can even buy it. China can even buy some oil from us. Why suddenly US is very friendly with China? Even they're speaking very highly about the Iranian missiles. I think Iran has got very good missile system. One fails to understand because end of the day, Iran doesn't like US. They're saying death to US.
Yeah.
But still, Trump wants to be on their side. I fail to understand. There must be some politics behind that. That's why, remember, there was no need for a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Israel, another few days, would have finished them out because the nuclear assets were already hit America. Israel would have finished up the remaining one. But even as the planes were flying to bomb Iran, Trump had Netanyahu to call them back.
Yeah.
That, I think, was a big, big mistake which Trump did. Maybe he'll realize it a few months from now when he realizes that Iran is back at where it was, that it is still producing nuclear weapons. And that is the day Trump will have to go back and bomb Iran again. But then it will be too late. Iran would already have the nuclear bomb by then.
Wow. So you think ceasefire was a mistake? But
it was a mistake because it was announced without asking either parties.
Like you do that? Can you just announce it without?
That's what happened, isn't it? Israel said we never, it didn't openly say it, but Iran openly said it. Nobody asked us. Trump himself announced it because he told Israelis not to bomb. Because the Iranians said, oh, if the Israelis don't bomb, we will stop. Just as he and Pakistan did it. Pakistan wanted a ceasefire. They went to Trump and cried the heart out. Trump called our people, not Trump, his team called our people and said, boss, they want a ceasefire. India said, sorry, let them call us. We won't take orders from you. So today, that's what I do. Even tomorrow, for all you know, Trump will go and announce a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia when neither of them know nothing about it. And they'll still keep fighting. And this is what is going to happen. Just 1 week or 10 days or even 2 months from now, Israel will have to bomb Iran again. Because this threat will not go away. If today, even today, Israel is losing 2 to 3 or 4 armed forces men in Gaza every day. Oh God, the battle is still on. The bombing is still on. The ceasefire is only in Iran. It is not in Lebanon. It is not in Hamas's territory of Gaza. And it is not with the Houthis. Those battles are still on. The proxies need to be taken out. They need to be flattened out. And as the proxies get flattened out, Iran will get active again. They will need to support their proxies. But in this particular instance, if you see, during this 12-day skirmish between Israel, U.S. and Iran, none of the proxies fired a single weapon at either of those American forces nor the Israeli forces. That is a big message that is there.
So, what do you think the tension is going to be right now? How is the tension is going to be right now?
As I told you, it's cooled down now.
Do you think it's cooled down?
You know, it's cooled down for the namesake.
Yeah.
The real issues are just being brushed under the carpet.
Yeah.
The real issue is Israel wants to stop Tehran from acquiring a nuclear bomb. And the Iranian mullahs know it very well that their kind of longevity or their staying on power depends on the nuclear bomb. The moment they don't have a nuclear bomb, people will throw them out. Just like Pakistan. A Pakistan army without a missile or a bomb or nuclear bomb, the people from Pakistan itself will throw this army out. They're just holding on because they have the thing, oh, my army has a nuclear bomb. Fair. Let us support them. And Iran is the same thing. It's a theocratic state. And the only way to do the entire thing is once and for all, they should have finished off the Iranian regime. They made a big mistake, the Americans.
But what about the revenge that would happen in the future?
What will happen? What happened in Iraq? Did you tell me? Is there anything happening in Iraq or is it happening in Iraq? Either way out. Nothing there. Kabul, Taliban, status quo, Libya. Who is the president of Libya? Do you know? I don't know. That's a problem. Who is the president of Iraq? Somebody is there. I don't know his name, but can't get it right now. This is a problem. So today, all of them have been reduced to kind of dummies. And Israel wants to kind of have a stranglehold on this missile production, nuclear production. And if Iran is down and out, I think 90% of the problem for Israel and about 50% for the US would get sorted out.
So, do you think Israel is only fighting to save their land, or they also might, get the perks of being the most powerful country in the Middle East, things like that? So,
See, they are powerful. They don't need to prove it. Technology-wise, knowledge-wise, economy-wise, a bit not great economy as India is, but they are. But more than anything else, it is a threat posed by countries like Iran through their proxies, Hezbollah, Houthis, and Hamas, and also other Arab states which are not exactly friendly with Israel. Qatar, for example. The head of Hamas is sitting in Qatar. They're driving around Lamborghini while the people are getting killed in Gaza. The Muslim Brotherhood is in Qatar. All of them are like that. So Israel also has an issue with Qatar, but it can't touch Qatar because the Americans are sitting there. Americans are one of the most biggest bases in the Middle East in Qatar.
But America supports Israel, right? Then what's the problem?
The problem is not that. Today Trump is there, tomorrow it might be another president who might not like Netanyahu. Biden never liked him.
Okay.
By what what is Netanyahu did now in the last 3 months or 4 months is something that he wanted to do when Biden was there. But Biden didn't allow him. He didn't even give him weapons. You know what Kamala Harris said about Netanyahu. So obviously there's no support. This time there is support.
Okay.
But on the face of it, Trump has to show that he's like a grandfather. Take care of all his grandchildren. So everybody is having fun. So don't rock the boat. But then it will not work like that.
So Israel's biggest goal is to save the land?
Yes. Their land has to be saved. And see,
No ulterior motives?
there are ulterior motives.
Like,
No. For example, they want to expand. They want to ensure that there's a buffer zone between their enemies and them. It's only to the Mediterranean Sea that they don't have an issue. But then the missiles are coming from that side. The problem is they need a buffer between them and the Gazas. They need a buffer between them and Lebanon, which is the South Lebanon, which they already have. Then there is Syria, where the regime has just collapsed. So what do? So they need to kind of constantly keep your army on the go. Otherwise, see, once you hit the Hezbollah, it's out. With the pager attack, which I think was one of the most brilliant attacks ever, military strategies ever. A very low-value strategy which worked to create high-value damage. Then Nasrullah's killing. The entire Hamas leadership killing has wiped out Hamas and Hezbollah totally. The Houthis were taken on by the Americans. But then at the end of the day today, none of those three have woken up in the last 1 week. You can't even see them anywhere. And there's a message in that Iran is today isolated. Its proxies are no longer working for them. But they're saying, boss, that is your own battle, you fight. Whereas it was Hamas which started everything on October 7th. They created the mess for which Iran is paying for it now. Hezbollah paid for it. And the Houthis are also paying.
Iran is paying for it because Iran has funded it, right? So Iran was always in.
Yeah, they say, you sow a wind and reap a whirl.
Yeah.
It always happens. It always happens. And that is how the world works. You create a problem and then you have to act. Pakistan, Taliban were their own creation. Today, Taliban is hitting Pakistan.
Yeah.
I call it the Basmasur effect. Basmasur ko war diya and Basmasur wants to test it on Lord Shiva's head. Something very similar.
What is, you have seen so many patterns, so many, everything is sort of a pattern. Every fight is sort of a pattern. What do you think is going to happen for the rest of the year between Israel and Iran? Israel and Iran.
Well, Israel and Iran, for now, it will be quiet. Okay. But I guess, as I told you earlier, 2-3 months from now, it will all go back to the same thing. Because Iranians are now kind of recouping.
Yeah.
They're trying to see what they lost. And once they know what they've lost, and they start kind of recouping the thing, they start working on the nuclear program again, that's when the problem starts. And that's where the hit is going to come. Because, see, end of the day, it was very clear. Whatever has happened, be the Lebanon conflict or whatever, I'm looking even at the latest report, for example, the Gaza war. Now, when they started it in December 2008, it started then, not now. Okay? And it's still, that continued till 2009. That was called Cascade, Operation Cascade. Then there was another Operation Pillar for Defense. That is 2012, Gaza. Look at the number of operations Israel has done over the years.
Yeah.
And that is where the lesson is there, that you ask this question, how long will Israel keep fighting? They have no choice. They have to keep fighting. The Northern Arrows, which is the invasion of Lebanon, it's continuing now. It's not stopped. Operation Iron Sword, which is the Gaza operation you asked for earlier. Again, it's an ongoing thing. It will not stop overnight. There has to be a result where, like what happened with Yasser Arafat, somebody has to take a responsibility and sign off saying, no more terrorism. But then it's like India, Pakistan. Pakistan needs to keep the terrorists active. Be the Lashkar-e-Toiba or Jaish-e-Mohammed. Because their existence depends on that. And something similar with the Iranians also. Iran, without its proxies, is zero.
So do you see any potential countries becoming a threat to Israel or Iran?
Iran has plenty of enemies. The Arab world itself has a lot of enemies. They want to see the Khamenei out. But Israel, new enemies, I doubt. It will be the same existing. Iran is the head of the snake and they hit the head of the snake. Or the head of the octopus or whatever you want to call it. So that has been done and dust. There's nothing beyond to do after that. Now what Israel has to do is basically recoup. Because Netanyahu is fighting a legal battle, which Trump spoke about yesterday. They have to recoup the weapon production. They have to get that done. They have to ensure that the economy picks up again. They have to get the reservists back into the regular jobs because they're not regular army men. They lost a lot of people. Recoup that because the families have lost it. Somewhere on the way, Israel has to now relax a bit, maybe for 5 or 6 months, and then tell the US boss, you made a mistake of not completing the Iranian job. We didn't let us do it. Now you better learn that they're still back with the nuclear production. Our threat is on you. You decide what you want to do. As simple as that.
So let's talk about the global impact because of this. So let's say if Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz or blocking 20% of the world's oil, how long before the global economy spiral into chaos?
Well, now the question doesn't arise because there's a ceasefire now. Iran also knows that if the oil doesn't flow through the Strait of Hormuz, its own economy is going to get hit. It itself cannot export any oil. Till now, there was a ban on Iran exporting oil to any other country. Now, President Trump had told them, go ahead and do it. They will start selling oil left, right, and center. So, all the so-called ban against which Iran will now go for a toss.
Why was the ban?
Well, the ban was because the Americans didn't like the Iranians. They felt the Iranians were building up their nuclear assets. And the Americans put a ban and they're saying you cannot sell oil. Same as Russians. They went to war with Ukraine and America said, okay, you're out of the banking system. We cannot sell oil, all that stuff. But we bought oil from both Russia and Iran.
Yeah.
That's what we did. So the question of Strait of Hormuz closing down doesn't arise at all. It will not happen.
Not happen right now because of ceasefire. But what about in the near future?
The threat of shutdown will be there, but it will not happen at all. Because Iran cannot do it unilaterally.
So for Iran, do you think oil and water routes are way more power than the nuclears?
Oil is something that is naturally there with them.
Yeah.
Okay. They can keep selling it till it dries up, the wells dries up. The question is, what about the future? Iran started the nuclear mandate of saying we need nuclear power for the future, for generating electricity. But then it diverged from that and went into making bombs, at least the possibility of making bombs, nuclear bombs. And that is where the Americans and the Israelis woke up and realized the threat. Israel realized it pretty early, actually. Almost 20 years ago, they wanted to knock off the Iranian nuclear sites.
Oh.
But then the American president those days refused to support.
Okay.
Even India refused to support the Pakistani nuclear sites being taken out. Indira Gandhi and then later Rajiv Gandhi and even for that matter Nassim Rao refused to support the Israelis. Otherwise, Pakistan wouldn't have had these nuclear assets which they have now. Israelis would have knocked them off because they're suspicious of Pakistan also. But now that US has given assurance saying that we will take care of Pakistan, you don't worry.
And India has invested about over $500 million into Iran's Chabar port. Yeah. So is that about to be blown away?
No, that will always be there. See, the Chabar fort's advantage for Iran is that they don't have the money to invest in that particular area. Now they have some money and they start selling oil, but they wanted somebody like India to come and develop it so that the trade goes through that towards the upper parts of it, towards the Afghanistan's and old Soviet regime. So that is where it can end. For India, that's also good because they cannot travel through Pakistan. The trucks cannot go through Pakistan. So for India, it's great to have a port there because from there they can approach the entire ex-Soviet bloc and do trade with them.
And Indian airlines are also taking massive detours.
Not really now, because it happened in the early days of Pakistani airspace. That's only airlines trying from Amritsar, Delhi, and to a certain extent from around northern part of India, Srinagar and all that.
So it recently happened actually from Hyderabad as well. And my uncle was mentioning that we had to take a detour.
Yeah, it is detour. Yeah. There because the no flights.
Do you think the prices are going to increase now?
No, it will come down again because one is the Iranian airspace was closed for some time. The Qatari airspace was closed for a day or two. In fact, the entire West Asia was closed down. When the Pakistani airspace detour is about 1 hour for northern flights originating from north of India, but for flights which are originating from south of India, there's no issue because they don't go through the Pakistani airspace.
And India has always been neutral. They've never supported or, had a voice key. I support this country or that country. So do you think this silence is going to cost India in some or the other way?
Well, silence is better.
Really?
The moment you open your mouth and say, I support this country, then the other country will get angry with you. So we have seen that with Israel now. When Israel bombed Iran, we have put out a very bland statement saying, nahi hona chahiye tha, we should not have done that and all that. So we know, everybody knows where the loyalties stand. Simple as that. We will always remember somebody who helped us. Iran did not help us anywhere. They always bring up the Kashmir issue at the Islamic countries' meetings. On the other hand, Israel has helped us right from Kargil till now with missiles or whatever drones and whatever we need. So we should never forget a good friend. And Israel is a good friend of India.
So do you think is killing to prevent future killing smart idea?
Depends on the way you look at it, which side of the fence you are. If I'm killing future terrorists, then it's a good thing to do. Like we did the first attack on the 8 terror camps. It was a great idea to do. Because that sent a message down there. We did Balakot, approximately 300 were killed there. After that, we never saw any major infiltration from that side. That means it worked.
Amid all of this, do you think is Pakistan the unexpected winner? Because they're getting super support from the West.
Pakistan is like the curry patta you use in food. They'll be used for seasoning and then they'll be thrown away. Right now, Pakistan is being used by US to counter their nuclear sites, which can fall into the wrong hands. US wants to lock and keep the keys in Pentagon. On the other hand, it wanted Pakistan support for Iranian bombing, which Pakistan agreed. Now, Iran is not going to keep quiet. After this entire thing gets over, they share a border, a long border. Iran is going to fund the Baluchis like crazy. And the Baluchis are going to hit the Pakistanis like crazy. That's what's going to happen. And that is something that Pakistan should have been worried about earlier because the Baluchis never had any sophisticated arms. Now the Iranians will give them arms because Pakistan supported, which is what the lunch with Asim Munir and President Trump was all about. It was not about, Bitcoin stuff. It is about this. And America knows that the Pakistani army runs the show, as I mentioned earlier to you. They know that if you need to speak about something in Pakistan, you speak to the army establishment, not to the elected government. That is what it is.
But why Pakistan? Why Washington is choosing Pakistan?
Well, who else is there in that area? You can't trust the Afghans. They don't know where they'll do, what they will do. And that's it. Pakistan is a small country. It is right there in the middle of it. They need them because of these issues. They used them when they were fighting the Soviets. Big time. I mean, all the F-16s came from that time. And once the Soviets fled, when the Al-Qaeda came, Pakistan again got a lot of money to fight the terrorists. The F-16s were given specifically to fight the terrorists, but they used it against India. And that is why Pakistan is needed. Let us not get worried about it. I think we're giving too much importance to Pakistan.
Really? Because don't you think US support could give Pakistan a seat on the table on the global?
US also knows very well that what Pakistan is and what India is. Zameen Asman ka farak hai, dono. We are technologically ahead, far ahead of Pakistan. Pakistan is a failed economy, which is begging for money, and that's what it is doing, going to IMF and every now and then begging for money.
And can we Indians trust the US?
You can. See, US knows what Indian market is all about. We are one of the world's largest market, possibly after China. If you want to sell anything right from a pen to an elephant, you need India.
And do you think we should rethink our alliances?
Why should we? Alliances are all there for the sake of it, whenever you need them. Who has stood by you during your bad days, you should remember that. That's why I spoke about Israel. Russians helped us during the 71 war. Now they are having their own mess in Ukraine. But let us remember that we need support from those people, the ones who helped us those days. And that's what it is. Because at the end of the day, somebody like Trump going and asking Asim Munir to support him for a Nobel Prize. Imagine ridiculous Pakistan government issuing a statement saying Trump should get a Nobel Peace Prize. And next day, Trump goes and bombs Iran. Now what happened? Winner withdraws the statement. So it's like a school election, a college election where one guy is very powerful. You go and take his recommendation. Say, "ये इसने बोला है मेरे को वोट डालने के लिए." That doesn't work like that. The Swedish committee, I don't think they take recommendations so frivolously. If it happens, it's a surprise for me, but I don't think it'll happen.
All right. So, Sureshji, what's next?
I think next, let us hope for a period of peace because everybody is sick and tired of the war. We wanted more war. At least the Indians wanted some more of a couple of days or more, where INS Vikrant could have knocked off Karachi and all that kind of stuff, which our news channels wanted, which never happened. But then the point is not that. The point is very simple, is that we are now slated to become the third largest economy in the world. We are kind of getting our technology together in the export of defense equipment, big business. We are kind of selling Vande Bharat to other countries.
Yeah.
Now time has come for India to showcase its strength. And if the Americans want a good trade deal, so be it. We are close to signing it, I believe, according to President Trump.
Yeah.
But then, why would Indians buy an American apples or American bourbon whiskey when they can get something for half the price here?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a huge market, right from cell phones to laptops to everything. So when any country wants to sell anything, it knows that it needs a market which is as big as, which is what Canada realized when it invited Prime Minister Modi for the G7.
Yeah.
Because you cannot ignore India. It's too huge a market to ignore. And if you want to do business, come here. And if you want to come here, you better respect the local ambitions, local cultures. KFC learned in the hard way, McDonald's learned in the hard way, Ford fled India. All that happened.
Just one question, because you are a very you were a journalist, and even now you're like with top of the news and everything. How do you trust media when there's a lot of right information, wrong information, information for the TRP? How do you know if the information is real, if the media is actually saying what has happened?
Never trust the breaking news culture. That is something I've realized. First of all, I hardly watch any news debates.
Oh.
Yeah, I read on my laptop, on my iPad, on my phone. I watch a lot of videos on YouTube, both from India and abroad, mostly abroad. Quality stuff. If it's a defense analysis, I watch that. There are a lot of Indian channels which do good job of it. I watch a lot of vernacular channels. So the idea is that when you hear a news saying X news has happened, America has bombed Natanz site. You know that Natanz was not bombed by them. It was done by the Israelis.
Oh.
So who did it? Or even you take the Fordo nuclear plant. We know for sure that it cannot be completely destroyed. The fake news is a part of today's business, and Americans themselves had a major problem because somebody from CIA leaked the information, saying nothing happened. So the question is, when you listen to a news, I'll just say, by the time you put on your shoes, the light travels around the world and comes back. And that's what happens to lies. But I think we got to take everything with a pinch of salt. When you see that too much of reliance on one part of the news saying this is correct, that means something is wrong with it. We should always ensure that we look at different sources. Because today what is happening, everybody wants to be the first, as you said, want to be the TRPs.
Yeah.
They come out with news and next day they say, I'm sorry, we didn't know this was fake news. Sorry, the damage is done.
Yeah.
That's as simple as that.
So I am nowhere near, being up to date with the current affairs and stuff, but I want to get started. I want to start this journey. What couple of platforms would you suggest me that, Riya, I think you should start from here? And this is a question of almost a lot of people. We don't know where to start.
Start by reading good Indian newspapers.
Like
the Times of India, the Economic Times. If you want to really learn about the financial part of it, the Economic Times. If you want to read the international part of it, there are a number of publications like Politico from Atlantic, even New York Times, which I feel is highly biased, but they have certain very good articles. Economist, highly biased, but they have good articles sometimes. So there are things like, you pick and choose. You don't like something, you don't like something. It costs money to subscribe to all this. I mean, I spent a fortune on this. Washington Post and New York Times and you name it. We look at Al Jazeera, for example. We know that they are peddling a Qatari news segment. But then so be it. I will watch it for the worth of it. I mean, I know that if I need to get some news from Egypt, can I get it? Today, everything is available. I mean, you read. I tell you, this reading habit is gone among youngsters today.
You mentioned it last time as well.
And I'm telling everybody when I go for different news shows, ask you the same question. Suresh ji, where do you get this all the information from? I said, I read. 10 minutes I sit and read something. As I was about to speak to you, I was listening to a podcast from the Israeli army itself, saying how they knocked out various things. And I'll post it on my Facebook. By the time I go home, it will be posted on Facebook. This is where people have to score an edge. And those who are in the news media, or at least trying to get into news media, youngsters who are studying or intern, they need to understand that knowledge-wise, everybody will be on the same. I'm talking technical knowledge. But beyond it, to make you a superstar or make you a person who's sought after in the market, is the fact that you know something more than what others know. That's very important.
That's true.
Read, and read.
Thank you, Suresh ji. Thank you so much for being on the show again. It was a delight. Thank you.
Thank you.